to implement the PD alone is not worthwhile from the figures that you've got here, and it's hingent on getting the planning. And for the amount of money tied up in that project, the duration of the project before you can put spade in the ground, that's why it doesn't quite work.
And just bear in mind, he's the king of PD.
There's so many opportunities out there, but it's important to get your shot selection right. We have Tristan Gordan for you right now, who's pitching for funding for a commercial to residential conversion project over in Norwich. What you're about to see is his pitch, which appeared on TV on Sky Channel 191 on the hit TV show Property Elevator. Property Elevator is a Dragon's Den style pitch show where property people come to pitch for funding for their property projects. Tristan is pitching his deal to 5 property angels: Nicholas Wallwork, Helen Chorley, John Howard, Paul Mahoney, and myself, Ranjan Bhattacharya. What you're going to see is the pitch as it went out on telly, but I'm going to kind of freeze the action now and then and give you the benefit of my commentary, analysis, and antics from behind the scenes. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon. We release new videos each and every week, all dedicated to keeping you on top of your property investing game. And remember, there are 25 pitches in Series 3. All of them we're going to break down for you on this channel. Binge watch the lot. They're in this playlist. But make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you know as soon as we upload the next one. Now let me hand you over to Elizabeth Warburton, the show's presenter, who is having a little chat with Tristan before he comes in to face us angels.
Tristan, welcome to the show. What have you brought today then?
So today I'm coming along with a property that I've named Vista, which looks over the river in Norwich. It's a beautiful property which is previously been a warehouse until about 2000.
Right.
And then it's been converted into offices and used as a building consultancy firm.
So you're wanting commercial to resi?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
And touch wood, there's enough margin in there to be able to retain the units at the end, all with a few different exits.
So tell me, what do you need from the angels today?
So today I'm looking to raise £240,000 of seed capital to go towards the deal. I've already raised or found dev finance for the property.
Okay.
So it's just the seed equity to get the deal going and moving forwards.
Yep.
And then hopefully we'll be able to turn the whole project round in about 8 months.
Brilliant. Well, good luck. I'll have a chat to you when you get out. I've got my fingers crossed for you.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks.
So this is Tristan here with one of my favourite types of projects. It's commercial to residential, all the rage right now, and for good reason actually. Commercial to residential conversion projects present fantastic potential for budding developers to make some great profits without having to go through the rigmaroles of planning. But is this deal any good? Let's find out how he fares.
We've now got Tristan coming in to see us, and he's got a deal in Norwich, which, funnily enough, I obviously know very well. Got businesses in Norwich, so and I know exactly where this is, so that should be interesting.
Looks like a good one.
Now, I should say, for all those watching at home, we haven't got a clue who's coming in to see us with their deal. They will have presented us with a little information pack, which we get about 5 minutes before they come into the room to pitch their deal. So what you're seeing for the first time is pretty much what we're seeing when Tristan comes in to pitch.
Thank you for coming in
Wasn't that a great pen twiddle there from Nicholas? His hidden talents.
today. I'd like to know, we'd all like to know actually, a bit about you and a bit about the deal you've brought us today.
And where you bought that shirt.
And where I bought the shirt. This came direct from China.
Wow.
And,
Oh, excellent.
And I've ended up having a few people could ask, do I just have the one shirt? No, there's a selection of 4 of them. So then that way
Excellent.
you can
Very
always
on
keep
brand.
them on brand. And there's
No, I'm not going to get one, so don't bother writing anything in the comments below.
also in the car park you'll find there's a zebra print van as well.
Wow.
So,
Excellent.
it runs all the way through.
Good
I
brand
thought he was going to say a
marketing.
zebra.
Do you want to get on with the pitch?
Yeah, that's what I thought. The only thing he was missing was a zebra. Never mind the van. He might as well have wheeled in a zebra into the studio.
I'll do. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for having me today. I've come along to bring a property that I've named Vista. which is 34 Yarmouth Road, which just faces out the river and it's located in the Broads Authority. I have been a property investor, whether for myself or for other people, since about 2012. Previously, I used to work for a student property investor and landlord who had about 150 houses when I joined them and about 200 when I left. And whilst I was working for them, I was their property investment manager. And without even realising it, I was deal sourcing, finding properties and opportunities for them, gutting them, refurbing them, and you'll see in my CVs that I've given you. At one point I was doing 6 refurbs, did about 45 rooms with 4 build teams in 2.5 months. So I then moved over to a company called Castle now, which you'll see in there, and there I was working for a ground rent investor and freehold investor. And I was just trying to find stuff where we could add a bit more margin to it, and typically we focused on problem properties where we find the problem, fix it, and then we can then take the margin. So I mean, you know, if you'd be able to find a property where it's got management issues, we'd then be able to uplift the YP that we're selling at.
Now, it's a very, very confident start there to the pitch by Tristan. Set out his CV, set out his credentials, and you can see that he's very, very investable, plenty of experience. And if you were to kind of partner with Tristan, he certainly wouldn't need tons of hand-holding and babysitting to see a deal through. Absolutely solid start.
And when I moved down to Southampton, I thought, why work for someone else? I can see how creative this can be, how more interesting this can be, and what we can do with finance and funding. Let's go do it for myself. So that's a little bit about me. Well, that's more than a little bit about me. That's quite a lot about me.
Let's talk about the deal, please.
That's fine. We've got
John there had enough of talking about the CV, and quite rightly so. I think he's done his bit there. He's established credibility. Now let's see whether the deal's any good.
a purchase price agreed at £335,000. And as you'll see in the packs, we've got a GDV of about 1.38 million once we've achieved planning on top of the Class O. It's a commercial to residential investment. And you can see it's not necessarily the most beautiful building from this angle, but to the left of it, we've got a pub. But then all around the area, it's in a really quite a nice residential area where the pound per square foot is fairly high for the area. In Norwich, it averages between 270 to 300. I believe off the top of my head, this is about 310, 320 pounds a square foot in this area. Initially, I went in offering an exchange with delayed completion to get it in at 5%, and the idea being it would be subject to planning. The vendor is actually quite an old person, and they've decided that they don't want to deal with that, and they've had a negative experience before in it, so that's why I've used a lockout agreement. So
Okay, let's just unpick some of that in terms of the deal proposal. 335,000 is the asking price. They reckon if planning is achieved and you'll get the permitted development, you're looking at a 1.3 million end value. What he's done is looked at the end values in the area for residential property per square foot, which he's saying is about £310 per square foot in that area. Now, that's why commercial to residential deals work. Because if you can buy property at a price per square foot, which is far less than the residential value, and it doesn't cost you that much to convert from commercial to residential use, then you can be quids in. The question is, what will be the conversion costs of this building and whether that would provide for a decent margin.
The idea is I want to go for as many units as we can possibly fit in the building, so then I can then go back to the Broads Authority with planning to then come back down to the project that I want and deliver something that actually suits the area and the needs of the people in the area. I've had a main contractor to come around and have a look at the building.
The thing that is raising a slight concern with me, and you'll see us develop this point as the pitch goes on, is that he's been very clever in actually trying to negotiate a delayed completion. So, but I think the problem is it's the 5 months element. The delay is only for 5 months, and he's trying to get a lot done in that 5 months space of time, which may be the undoing here.
To give a rough idea of what they think needs doing with it, I've had a structural engineer round to the property as well. Today, I'm looking for seed capital of about £240,000. I've been in touch with my broker and secured development finance and funding for the building with Octane Capital. So the idea is that once we come down the line, they will then fund it, the development further on. The other side of it is we've got open market value bridging it against what we believe the property to be worth once we've got the Class O on it. The idea then being over the space of the development we'll then draw down as we hit through certain stages. But I've done subdivide.
What I like about this thing so far is the amount of work he's done in terms of getting the financing sorted out. So he's got development finance sorted out, bridging finance sorted out. What he's looking for is very explicitly the seed capital. The other thing I like is that, as you can see from the picture, it's not a building that looks residential to start with. It does look like a commercial building. It's got that warehousey vibe to it. Now, when you're converting commercial buildings, which particularly don't look like residential buildings, then you do have to call in a structural engineer and to make sure that the conversion is actually feasible. And he did slip into his pitch that that's what he's done, and he's found out that's the case.
We've turned 1 beds into 2 beds, but something of this scale I haven't done myself, so that's why I've then gone to a project management company locally to look to bring on their services, which then they can bring on contractors, bring those on board, and then they can then deliver the site from start to finish, ensuring we've got the guarantees on it. One of the interesting things I think is interesting, I quite like numbers. As you'll see, you've got endless numbers in your packs.
Yes.
You'll be good friends
Lovely.
with Helen.
Yes. Delighted with that.
It should achieve about a 26% margin on the deal. Off the top of my head, I think it's about 37% return on cost.
So Tristan had presented a very, very thorough pack. You can see me thumbing my way through it. Plenty of numbers in there to digest. But one thing he also did, and it was very clear in his presentation, was, if you like, the management summary, the executive summary figures, which were 26% margin, 36% return on cost for a PD, a permitted development project. That's quite respectable. We'll get back to the video in just a moment. What is the most exciting opportunity in property right now? And that is repurposing defunct commercial buildings to residential use. Now, most people don't really know where to start, what to look for, and how to exploit these opportunities. And that's why I've prepared 90 minutes of free training for you to get you started on this wonderful journey. You can register for this free training at property-workshop.com. Join me on that free training, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of the video.
So it looks like you're going to use PD to get the conversion to studio 2 1 beds and 2 3 beds, and then go back for planning to try to get 2 5 bed duplex out of it. And that's going to be like HMO type thing, is it?
Yeah, that's the idea. So where it's quite
So let's just unpick that again. So this is a 2-phased kind of scheme. They're going to go for PD, permitted development, which is a light touch planning regime for the commercial to residential conversion. And then after that has been won, which typically takes about 56 days, they're going to go back to planning to get some further sort of enhancements to that. The disadvantage with that, of course, it just elongates the project and introduces an element of uncertainty to it. Remember, planning is uncertain. Permitted development is far more guaranteed.
close to the city centre, and is, you know, and
Is that not that close to the city centre, is it?
It's not that
Tristan?
close,
Because
no.
I know it. I know the road, and I know exactly where it is.
So what I've done,
You can't rumble John there. He's a local. He knows the area. Well, he's not a local, but he just knows the area very, very well. So you can't pull the wool over his eyes.
is in the back of the pack, you'll see that I've got a letter from a local HMO landlord or letting agent, and they've turned around and confirmed the rents that they believe that we could achieve for that property.
With option 1, it's not really worth doing it, is it?
No.
But
But
you've
you
got
need-
it subject to planning to get option 2.
Yeah.
Now, Paul has just went into the heart of the issue with this deal. Basically, PD is pretty much guaranteed. If you know what the criteria are for how permitted development deals are assessed, you can pretty much tell whether you're going to get it or not. But the problem with this particular deal is that if you just implement the permitted development, it doesn't quite cut the mustard. It's only a profitable deal. In other words, it will only produce the figures, 26% margin, 36% return on cost, if he gets the planning permission for the juicier bit. Now, as we all know, planning permission is a little bit of, it's a wing and a prayer kind of stuff, quite frankly.
That's the idea, to then
Right.
lift it up.
And how long's your lockout agreement?
So this is the lockout agreement, covers the initial permitted development, and then
So
that
2
brings
months?
it up. So it's 3 months from
3
when
month
we had it
lockout,
in,
okay.
and that was about 2-3 weeks ago. So
Okay. Just before we go any further, I just want to say, excellent pitch. Slightly long, but that's fine. But the detail you've gone to, for someone that hasn't done a deal of this size, you're doing all the right things. Engaging the project management firm, getting builders quotes, getting structural engineering, getting the key
consultants on board early before you buy it to find any red flags. Well done on that. I think
Thank you.
you've done really well so far. Thank you. Just talk me through.
The upstairs is actually a studio flat.
Okay.
The owner owns the building wants to retain that to themselves. So that's been carved off. So the building that we're getting is effectively, you can see the pitch roof that runs behind it.
Yeah.
It goes across, and that comes down the back. And that hole has been built pretty dense, so it runs straight back to the river.
Yeah.
So that's what we're getting out of it.
So it isn't what we're seeing.
So no, not quite. So this section.
Did you used to work for an estate agent, by any chance? So
The bit on the left.
So that's why in your
it's the
pack-
building on the left.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, what's being converted is the ugly one. It's the ugly building that you can see to the back there. The owner's keeping the nice bit.
Not the building on the right.
No.
Okay. What about flooding?
That's the first thing I looked at, and that's probably why it's put most people off the property, because as you all know, with permitted development, flooding instantly puts it out of the question. Where this property in the front of it is elevated, there's a 0.1% flood risk chance, and then there's
So is it 1, 2 or 3? Zone 1, 2 or 3, planning wise, flood wise?
I don't know the answer to that question, but it's the minimal, it's the least.
It's 1 then.
So it's going to be one.
Which is 1 in 100 years, I think, something like that. Now that surprises me. Is it because it's on a big slope down to the Broads?
It does look quite high up, doesn't it?
Because
So
the
it is
Broads
quite high.
does
There's
flood.
also, when I've looked at you can use the flood risk planes and everything else online.
That's it, yep.
And when you look at that, even on the other properties and other places in the area, they're actually, even though the ones that are lower down to the river are still on a similar kind of flood risk level.
How much?
So when you do permitted development, any permitted development application to convert commercial to residential, you have got to look at the flood risk. Because of course, commercial buildings can be located in a floodplain. Residential buildings shouldn't be. And if you're converting the ground floor, then that can be an issue. So I mentioned the criteria for converting buildings under permitted development. And one of the criteria that you've got to make sure you fulfill is that the commercial building you are looking to convert to residential is not in a flood zone. And here he's checked that out. I mean, it was a very sort of laser targeted question there by John. He's checked it out and he's done all his research on it, and it's clearly not the case.
Parking is on site. Doesn't look very many.
So at the moment, out the front, is enough width to be able to fit 4 cars.
Mm-hmm.
There's also across the road.
Why do you say it's fine or with prior approval? Prior approval looks at highways and therefore parking.
Okay.
So some authorities will want to see the national minimum standards for parking that they apply on normal planning applications as part of prior notification. So you need to definitely have a parking highways consultant on board to see what the attitude, the local person that knows the local council and knows their attitude to parking.
The fortunate bit is across opposite the site, you'll see there's a close that comes up and there's car parking on the side.
Okay.
Or there's spaces available. And then again, around the area, there's other flats and other developments nearby. And again, there's more roads that cut off from it.
You know, they're going to look at highways carefully on this, I think. And you need to ask your planning consultant or get a planning consultant that really knows that council. Because it's just the attitude of the council. I've got properties in, say, Newbury and Reading. Newbury want the full national space standards for parking, not national standards. Reading don't want any parking.
Yeah, Nick's right on that. It's another one of the criteria. So when you're doing a PD application for commercial to residential, yes, they look at flooding. They also look at, they can look at the highways impact, and what they mean by that is car parking. So some councils will look at it differently. Some will want you to have off-street parking for every flat that you create. Some will take a different view. So if it's in a city centre or it's close to public transport connections and the like, all they'll do is they can insist that your development is a car-free zone. But that's something that will have to be taken into account. One cheap way of finding out your council's attitude to highways impact is simply to go on their website and look at previous permitted development applications in that area, in that street, in the neighbouring streets, and see what the council's attitude has been to car parking. And that will give you a very, very good steer of the attitude of your local council.
So complete opposite opinions in 2 towns that are less than 15 minutes apart.
What I'm concerned about, and what I think you should have allowed for, is a little bit more time in that lockout period. Because I know prior approval is 56 days. And that's in slam dunk kind of cases. Whenever there is something else, like all the criteria that we've discussed, like highways and flood, and there may be noise, I don't know what, you mentioned there's a pub next door, there'll be noise, impact of the noise from that commercial occupier and these guys. What these needs is, these aren't showstoppers, they're things that you need specialist consultants to do reports on and studies on and submit that with your application, and that adds to the time. And then in the case of parking, for example, they may want something like a Section 106 agreement to say that it's going to be a car-free development. That takes a little bit of time. So what typically happens is 1 week before the end of the 56-day deadline, the council or the planning officer will say, can we have a 5-week extension to allow for this, that and the other? The other thing that worries me is the GDVs. Because we'll come on to I seem to be worried about too much here, but the first point is very, very important, and I've made this concern before. If you are going, because when you actually buy some or enter into an agreement, which is a sort of conditional agreement, you've got to give yourself a time frame. And the issue is, what happens if you run out of time? Particularly when you're dealing with councils, it can take, and it will take longer than you think, particularly when you have to get expert reports in. We didn't really tackle that issue about the pub next door. It will need, as well as all the flood and the highways impact and all of this, you'd also need to consider the noise that customers make in the pub and their opening times and all of that, and the noise from that pub, what impact that has on future residential occupiers of this conversion. You'll have to consider that. And this takes all time to get these experts in to produce these reports to support your application. So when you're looking at a 5-month window here of conditionality, that's starting to shave things a little bit too fine. Now let's see what I'm banging on about the GDVs now. With commercial to residential conversion, it's this old phrase which I love: if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it is the duck. So when you've got commercial buildings that look as though they're residential buildings, you will find that the GDVs will be pretty much bang on what the GDVs are for comparable residential properties. But if it looks obviously commercial, warehousey, there's either going to be a massive discount with the end values compared to similar purpose-built stuff, or you have to spend a lot of money on recladding and looking have you taken that into account? Sorry, carry on.
With the GDVs, they've been based around about the £290 a square foot mark, so that is a bit below what's out in the rest of the market. The other thing that benefits this property is obviously, I realise a few of the units can have side views rather than necessarily over the river, but the units at the back that are facing over the river,
they'll be very nice. They will,
and they achieve a much more of a premium down that area than any of the properties.
Especially if you can get some moorings.
Which of the units have the view at the back?
So the split level duplexes will have views out the back onto the river, and then the idea with the penthouse, that's going to end up having a view looking out the back and across the side of it. So
the HMO units have the...
But they could also be used if you didn't put the stud-work in on the ground on the first floor, that you could also use them as, say, family house and have large rooms across the back of them.
So the HMO...
Listen, I get all this, it's very pretty views, lovely part of the world, but what we're not talking about is the view of the actual building itself. And the view of the building, it's pretty ugly ex-commercial building, so it's not going to attract the kind of premiums that they might be expecting in the GDVs, and that's something to consider. There's also the dwelling mix here, because we're talking about HMOs in the mix. We're talking about penthouses next door to HMOs, and I think we're coming on to that issue right now.
HMO units have the...
But they could also be used if you didn't put the stud work in on the ground on the first floor, that you could also use them as, say, family house and have large rooms across the back of them if you wanted to.
Who would want a 3-bedroom penthouse, even if the view's amazing, above 2 5-bedroom HMOs?
Idea with it was that the 3-bedroom penthouse would be used as an HMO as well.
As well, okay.
One thing
that'll be an interesting HMO, won't it?
That you haven't mentioned is windows. I mean, I can see one of the side elevation has a few windows, but the other doesn't have any.
Yeah. We're going to be putting all of the units across the sides where we've already got windows and outlook. And then the idea is then once we go into planning permission.
But in terms of planning, you'll need planning for those windows.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could potentially get your prior notification, the lockout agreement runs out, you buy it, you then got to go through possibly a 3 to 6 month planning process to get the windows before you can implement that PD. Have you considered that problem?
So the flip side is, as you've said, if there is a delay like that, then where I said probably with the planning, with the Class O on it and something else moving along with it, we should be able to hit about £410,000 on a sale price. So even if you wanted to exit the site early and not do the rest of the development, there's still a half decent margin there, which doesn't quite answer your question.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but that's like a get out of jail free card. Maybe just sell it on for whatever you can. Maybe there's a bit of uplift, but maybe someone experienced like ourselves might come in and say, well, why are you selling it now? It's got no windows. The one thing they'll look at is the likelihood of getting those windows. And they're going on the planning portal and see your refused application for windows. Yeah. Unless you.
This is a serious issue. Yeah, I don't know whether you guys are picking up on this, but if you're going to convert a commercial building into residential use, then every habitable room of the residential property that you're creating has got to have natural light. And if the commercial building doesn't have that, then you have a little problem. That can be circumvented by applying for a separate planning application to punch those windows in, and then subsequently doing a permitted development to then convert that space with the windows into residential use. The issue here is there time for all of that with just 5 months of a lockout?
Withdrawn it, of course, which is what an experienced investor would do. They'd withdraw it before it got refused, but they'll still see a withdrawal, which most people assume would have been a refusal. Yeah. And so then it probably isn't worth what you think it is. It'll go back to office value. So I think the windows is quite a serious concern.
This to me looks a dog's dinner.
Doesn't mince his words, does he?
Looks a mess. For me, it's a knockdown, and I don't often say that.
Absolutely.
It's a knockdown, and it's a new build overlooking the water.
Another
That way you can
stories.
design all the flats overlooking the water. I'm not interested in HMOs overlooking. Why would you put an HMO overlooking the water? It's premium. I think it's not a bad.
Listen, I hate to say it, but John's absolutely spot on here. You've got that premium waterfront view. Why are you going to put penthouse apartments in that dumper building? This is a complete knockdown job. Now, I think where PD can help is to establish the precedent of having residential use on that site. So you'd go for permitted development. So this may be a 2 or 3 step strategy. We'll go for permitted development to convert the building into a number of residential units, and then having established the fact that residential use is permitted on that site, then you'd go for the knockdown and build something really nice on that site and get the maximum values per square foot out of the residential units that you'll make.
Location, it's not brilliant, but it's not bad. Norwich City Council concerned me. I've got an application on, I've got 12 flats, and you'll know, in Earlham Road. Earlham Road, good road. I'm trying to get 2 extra floors on it, and they've been 5 months nearly, and they still haven't got a decision. Can't get hold of anyone. They're a bit of a nightmare. So I'm concerned about that. I would personally go on a pre-app for a new build scheme. If you get a positive response, then I would certainly be interested in working with you. And I'm local, so.
I'm with John on that. The word I wrote down is this is more complicated than I have the headspace to deal with, to be honest. But you have been incredibly thorough.
Yeah.
And you've answered every question that's been thrown at you so far. But like I say, that's got headache written all over it to me, and I'm not on for any more headaches than I can cause myself.
I think there's simpler deals to do in Norwich. I can find those deals for you.
Yeah, just to echo what some of the guys said, the models you put together, everything you're doing is right. Just doesn't seem like the site is right. If you're applying that to a site that's a bit easier and you're not having to change so much and force the most out of it to make it work, because even if everything goes to plan with this, it's not a super profitable deal.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're looking at 25, 26%. Not bad, but that's if everything really goes to plan, which probably won't.
Yeah.
So there's probably much better deals out there which have more profit in them and are easier.
I could make that deal work for you, probably, but it's a lot of hassle. And if it was a competition and said that was what I was given to help make it work, then we could make it work, I'm sure. But doesn't mean just because you can do it, doesn't mean you should. Okay. And I just think there's, with your ability and obviously you know what you're doing. You're active and all the rest of it, I think you can find, if I challenge you or one of us angels challenges you, I think you can find a better deal than that, a simpler deal, a less risky deal. So would you
look? I'm on the same page as the guys. I think it's the kind of deal that you can just about make work. I think the biggest issue is the planning for the windows.
Yeah.
John says the council's slow. You know, unless you can negotiate some overage with the vendor, which is where you give them a percentage of the profit of the uplift of the development, to tie them into a subject to planning offer, full subject to planning, and then perhaps put in two schemes. Put in the PD scheme, which is going to look like a bit of a hash to the council, or you put in this beautiful luxury 4-storey scheme, and then they're going to want to go for that one because they know they'll get this hashed up PD scheme.
Well, I normally like these sort of deals, but I think the issue here is just on the PD alone, to implement the PD alone is not worthwhile from the figures that you've got here, and it's hingent on getting the planning. So I think the offer should have been made, rather than conditional on getting the prior approval 3 months, it should have been made conditional on the end result. Because the problem we'll have here is that you have to complete in 3 months, and we've probably got to wait at least a year before we can do anything meaningful on site. And for the amount of money tied up in that project, the duration of the project before you can put spade in the ground, that's why it doesn't quite work.
And just bear in mind, he's the king of PD. The prince of PD's over there. But he's...
Well, very nice compliment there for John. Very rare one, actually. But let's just unpick and add a little bit more to kind of what I said there. Now, the building is a dog's breakfast, quite frankly. And it's not that dog breakfast buildings aren't worth doing. They are worth doing in high-value areas. So you often find that in parts of London, a messy building is worth doing because the values per square foot are so much higher. Here we're looking at £300 per square foot of end residential value. Now, I'm working on some projects in London where the end values per square foot are closer to £800 per square foot. So when you're looking at those higher GDVs, then messing around with a messy building is slightly more worthwhile. The second thing that I always advise all my students is this. When you're looking at a PD conversion, make your profit just from the PD. If you want to do anything extra, and that involves planning permission, treat that as icing on the cake. That's cherry on top. That is not the cake. Your profit, your deal profit, your 30% margin and all of that needs to be made just from implementing the PD. Why? Because PD is certain. Provided you've got all your criteria, your checklist for your PD application, you pretty much know that you're going to get it in there about 56 days. So you've got certainty, and that's what you really want as an investor. And the other thing that I think a lot of us are skirting around the bush on here is the return, not just on money, but return on time and return on effort. Because the PD alone doesn't really deliver much of a result. You've pretty much got to wait until you've got the planning, and that's an if, and then that could be a year away. The time and effort to accomplish the margins that were quoted are just simply not worth it when you can get those sort of margins just on a straightforward 3 to 5 month PD deal. So it's a lovely little conversion, but there are better deals out there.
I thought he was going to call me the queen of PD then. I would have been very concerned.
Is there a joker? Is there a joker? PD?
Yeah, that's probably me. Helen?
No, headache.
Nicholas, the same?
It's not for me, guys, but you're highly investable and a great pitch today.
I think. Tristan, what I would like to do, if I may, is have a coffee with you next week in Norwich.
Sounds like a plan.
How's that?
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Well, he's got coffee, hasn't he? I mean, maybe you can get a cake with a cherry on top as well.
Very much.
Well done. Thank you.
Really well done.
So, Tristan, tell us what happened when you walked in the room.
So they asked for a little bit more detail and information about me, and I can go on for absolutely ever. So I think the pitch may have been a little bit longer than they were expecting.
So what was the feedback in general?
So they kind of looked at the site. I think some of them found it quite interesting, the aspects that it's got, though there's a few challenges with it.
Okay.
And I think John's comment was, knock the thing down and build something new.
Right.
So what I've gone in with, they weren't particularly happy with. and thought it was a bit more of a challenge to put the property together for the margin that would be achieved.
So do you think you'll consider demolishing it and putting another one, or are you
It'd be
going to
worthwhile
try and
running the
stick?
numbers and having
Yeah.
a look, because there
Yeah.
are some really desirable flats and blocks around the area.
Okay.
So it could be worthwhile
there's a
having a look to see what the
possibility.
GDV is and whether it's worth going for full
Okay.
planning.
Well, good luck. Keep in
Thank you very
touch and let us know how you get on. We'd love to see how it progresses over the next few months.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks.
So there's plenty of profit to be made in permitted development projects, provided you pick the right sites in the first place. If you want to know more about this absolute goldmine opportunity and how to select the right sites which make for profitable permitted development conversions, then check out my free 90-minute masterclass. Classes, I run them quite regularly. They're absolutely free. You can register for the next one using the link that you see on the screen and in the description below this video. Now let's get back to the Angels for their roundup.
Again, for me, frustrating because he's investable in, and it's local to me, and he just didn't come with
it
a
was
good
close.
enough deal.
And
He
they're trying to
answered
force-
every question that got thrown at him.
And from a development side, he was going down the exact correct route with the development. You know,
Yeah.
he would be able to run that on his own with minimal guidance.
I think with PD, there's so many opportunities out there, but it's important to get your shot selection right. You don't have to go
Ranjan.
for everything. Some you can hit sixers and bat them out the park, and those are the ones to go for. And these are the
Exactly.
ones to
Just
avoid.
because it's possible doesn't
Exactly.
mean you should do
should.
it. And we've always
Yes.
said that, Ranjan,
Yes.
haven't we?
Good summary.
And I think that's a really good summary.